What's going on, guys? TG or ThunderGod here, back with another video. Today I got New Horizons. Say what's up, bro.
Hey, what's up, bro?
All right, anyway.
What?
Anyway, today we have a bit of another swap scenario for you guys. I'm coining it, but today we're gonna be doing roles reversed for Neji and Lee. This one I'm actually really excited to talk about because I always love talking about part 1 stuff. And we're essentially going to be placing Lee in Neji's position at certain points of the story and vice versa. Y'all know the deal. Why am I explaining this? Go like and subscribe to both of us if you haven't already. And with that being said, let's get into the video. Now, you guys are anything like me and enjoy anime, but are always iffy about a lot of these anime sites with all these pop-ups and hyperlinks and whatnot. I want to make sure your device is protected. Look no further, as AtlasVPN is the absolute move for you. AtlasVPN is more than your average VPN. It blocks all malicious links, making it so nobody can try and steal your data, making it so you can browse or watch whatever you want stress-free. So you'll definitely want to pick this up for your anime watching journey sooner rather than later, as they actually have a special going on right now. It's super easy to use. Simply select whatever country you want to be in, and bam, you're connected in one click. This works on PC and mobile alike, so you can make sure you're secure on the go with unlimited devices to boot. Whether you're looking for something on Google and want to organically search something, or want to stream region lock shows on your favorite streaming services, AtlasVPN is the move. You can have a private Christmas and a safe New Year with AtlasVPN Premium. You can have it for just $1.70 a month with 6 months for free with a 30-day money-back guarantee. Click the link in the description below and grab this Christmas deal right now.
So for the first fight we chose was it was going to be Neji in Lee's position against Sasuke. Kind of a bit of a forgotten fight where Lee basically just challenges Sasuke before they enter into the tuning exams, part 1 or whatever. So in this situation, it should be like not much of a surprise if Lee with leg weights is just batting around Sasuke. Neji's going to do far worse. Like if he wants to run the ones with Sasuke, it's not gonna end well for Sasuke. Like let's just say, you know, we know that Neji is beating up on Lee without weights. So if Lee's beating up on Sasuke with weights, I think y'all can do the math there.
Bro sunned him so hard he went into a whole training arc based on Lee afterward. It's really bad, bro. It's so he sunned him bad. So yeah, nah, Neji stops. I agree. Next up, we have Lee versus Hinata. Now, this fight's a little weird to talk about since like Hinata's like always unconfident, even in a lot of her fights. Despite how few they are, but in this fight, right, especially like Neji gives her like a verbal beatdown. Like he's talking about like the places her eyes are going and like what that represents to her. It's disgusting. I've never seen anything quite like it in fiction. But he essentially gives her a verbal beatdown, and then Naruto comes in like, yeah, you could do it. And then she has like this crazy confidence boost, which like allows her to like throw hands with Neji. So I'll say this first and foremost. I don't think any of that would be happening here. I don't think she would do as well as she does against Neji. Just based off the fact that like she wouldn't have like Naruto cheering her on to that degree. Like Neji more so angered Naruto with his like verbal commentary, so I don't think that would happen here. I'll also say though is that she has a very good back and forth against Neji, which, you know, if you take that at face value, you might say, you know, she should be able to clap like weightedly and weightlessly if she's on par with this Neji. But the problem is that Neji kind of proves his superiority over her, with him blatantly overwhelming her very quickly and proving his superior speed, actually tagging all of her tenketsu without her even realizing it. And Hinata notes that this had been going on from the beginning of the fight, so he's able to do this and move at these speeds without her even noticing. It's quite ridiculous. So she's obviously not on Neji's level, even though you could, you know, make that assumption, along with like the factors leading up to this fight being somewhat questionable. So even if you said, right, that she'd be above like weighted Lee, or she attempts to block Lee's tenketsu, the chakra points wouldn't really matter. It'd be more so about Hinata destroying Lee's organs from the inside. However, Lee would more likely than not be prepared to deal with this, having been on missions with Neji, along with having bouts and being prepared to fight Neji in the tuning exams. It'd be a little weird to say like an inferior version of the Gentle Fist by an inferior user would fare a lot better than him. Maybe if she catches him lacking off the start of the fight, sure, but once he starts taking his weights off and realistically initiates the primary lotus and starts going into the 8 inner gates, the fight's gonna end just as quickly as it began. Honestly, the first gate alone would probably be enough for her, just because Hinata doesn't really have any of those incredible defenses that Gaara was exhibiting. In which case, like, Lee will literally just knock her up and like pause, like knock her into the air.
What?
Right.
What?
But no, you know what I mean. Bad terminology. But like, hit her in the air with the primary lotus. If Lee does initiate the primary lotus, it's kind of clipped for Hinata. I think a lot of people can see that. I don't think she's gonna have the confidence levels that she does against Lee, or she's gonna be able to deal with him as well as she did against Neji. I just think it's pretty clear. I think her performance against Neji is more so like an amp produced by Naruto. But if she does like have that same level, I think Lee, even if he struggles like in weightless, should be fine, especially since he's performing well against Gaara. But she's terrified to fight like Gaara, even based on his like small performance against like those nameless shinobi in the Forest of Death. Akamaru senses it. Even Kiba tells her not to fight Gaara before even mentioning Neji. So she really isn't going to be able to stop Lee. But I do want to give credit to Hinata, because I think she is underrated in this fight as well. But Lee really should clear it. If it goes down to it, he can go into the 5th gate. So Lee should clear this round. Next up, we have Neji versus Gaara in the preliminaries. This matters, not the finals. So I'll say this about this matchup. Before I even talk about the matchup itself, from a narrative standpoint, Gaara is painted to be a bigger threat than Neji. That is very clear. There's a couple indicators for this. Kiba goes out of his way to mention Gaara, but in the fact that Hinata should sub out before fighting before even like bringing Neji into the conversation, in which he's like, oh, you should also sub out against Neji. Same thing with Kankuro, right? Kankuro acknowledges Neji's strength, but in the same sense, he's like, oh, but we have a bigger monster, a sense of Gaara with a demon inside of him. So Gaara's just treated like as more of like a narrative threat than Neji before we even begin. Now, getting into the actual fight, Neji should actually be able to weave around Gaara's sand in the same sense that weightless Lee was. Neji should be more superior to that weightless Lee. I think Neji's more so in like the 3rd to 4th gate range, just based on the fact that when Lee enters the 5th gate, he's like, I was saving this move especially for Neji. So that's my own perception in terms of like Neji's speed, whether you agree or disagree or not. So Neji will be able to do it. Now, a lot of people are going to bring up like 64 palms in comparison to like Gaara's armor. I think this point is very questionable, just due to the nature of Gaara's armor, it being like a chakra layer on top of his like own or the sand layer. I think it's possible that Neji could block Gaara's Tenketsu with his 64 palms, just due to like the Gaara sand armor not being the exact same as Kidomaru's. I think the problem with this though is that it's gonna have the inverse effect if we go down this road, right? If we go down this road, it's gonna have the inverse effect in the sense that Gaara will bring out Shikaku, in the same sense that Naruto is able to bring out the Kyuubi while his Tenketsu are blocked. And Gaara will be able to bring out Shikaku very easily. He does it versus, he does it versus Dosu in that fight on top of the rooftop at night. The manga doesn't show up, but he clearly goes into Shikaku. Anime interpretations of the fight show him going into Shikaku. So he actually can. The reason he went into the ball against the Sasuke fight is A, he was pressured, but also he wanted to go into full possession, like full one-tail Shikaku. So he really should be able to like go into the full one-tail here. And if he does, like, it's kind of clipped for Neji, as Naruto, even with the knowledge of the Kyuubi chakra and the feats he performed, still feels inferior to like Chidori Sasuke, who Gaara was consistently tangling with Chidori being his only option against semi-transformed Gaara. So I do grant you that Neji should be able to perform a good or well against base like Gaara without, or just his sand. I think it's a little bit more questionable for his Tenketsu. I think it's possible that he actually can like block Gaara's Tenketsu, but there's no reason that Gaara can't bring out Shikaku, especially since he almost seems more adept at accessing Shikaku's chakra at this point than Naruto accessing the Kyuubi's chakra, with Shikaku being a tier above Neji. I think that's kind of like my little so you could say Neji's like above that Gaara, but Shikaku should be above him. In which case, Gaara should have no reason not to go into Shikaku in the prelims, as he only really cared to go into the one tails because that was kind of the plan with the Hidden Sound Village. So that's my little 2 cents. Do you have anything to add? I kind of give a mouthful.
Yeah, I think that just kind of a comparison you can make here is that Gaara technically won against gated Lee. Obviously, after Lee used the gate, he was basically defenseless. But Gaara was able to get up on his own power and walk away after that fight. And it's kind of hard to say, is Neji really going to be physically, like more of a physical force than gated Lee? It's kind of tough to say that. Another thing is that I do believe that Neji can pressure Gaara very well here. But if Gaara decides, like, you know, Shikaku or not, even if he doesn't want to go into Shikaku, if he goes into a sandball, he's not, like, there's no way that Neji is breaking through it. Like, Sasuke had to use Chidori to break through it. If he goes into a sandball, like, puts half his sand as a ball and the other half just to mess around Neji, like, Neji literally just can't win there in that situation.
Yeah, yeah, I definitely think there's a lot of feats. If you were gonna argue for Neji, it'd have to be against base Gaara, but we've kind of seen that with Gaara's like Shikaku being like very accessible to him, and even then like base Gaara has some ridiculous durability, so he honestly might just be able to continuously get up from what Neji's taking or throwing at him. So even with like him being able to throw up substitutions in the face of like 5th gate level speed, so you know, there's a lot to say, but generally Gaara should pass this tier just due to the reasons we talked about. I think Neji performs well, but to say like he'd actually be able to defeat Gaara, I think is a stretch, especially at this point in the series. So yeah, I'll say I'll add this too. Neji's actually shown training between this point and the tuning exams, so he could actually be stronger in the or like later in the tuning exams when he fights Naruto. So he also actually could be stronger when he fights Naruto as well. Like he's shown training with 10-10 before his final match, so it's entirely possible Neji's weaker here as a supplementary point. But yeah, that we think Gaara clears this and Neji takes the L. So that's pretty much it. I should also mention Neji's rotation, which I also think will be very useful in blocking Gaara's sand. 10-10 makes the case that Neji's rotation is more potent of a defense than Gaara's. I think this statement is overblown, as 10-10 has no idea the depths of Gaara's defenses or how much he can harden his sand. She actually doesn't even see the fight between Gaara and Lee. She was knocked out during that fight. Tamari pretty much claimed her in that whole encounter. So she doesn't even know the upper limits of Gaara's defenses. But regardless, this doesn't make too much of a difference. It really just aids Neji in avoiding lethal blows from Gaara's sand, which he'll be more than fast enough to evade regardless.
The next fight we have, which is a really interesting one, it's going to be Lee versus Naruto in the tuning exams. And this is going to be healthy Lee, not like broken leg Lee. But anyway, this is kind of like a real like brawl, really. But some comparisons I wanted to start with, like we talked about weighted Lee beat up Sasuke very easily like before the exams, but in this fight Naruto does very well, surprisingly, like taijutsu wise. Actually, one thing I need to bring up probably before getting into all this is that this isn't really going to be talking about like Naruto versus Gaara and what he was able to do in that fight. I mean, he had the will of fire going for him. He was very mentally amped, and like me and TG have talked about like the effects of that plenty of times. Like he did way better against Gaara than against Neji. This isn't that type of situation that's life or death, so it's going to be, we can expect what he does against Neji. But anyway, Naruto still did very well. Like he had to use clones, and they were pressuring Neji enough that he ended up having to resort to using things like rotation, which is not something Lee really has access to. So if he overwhelms Lee, that can be like a problem. But anyway, in general, Lee should do well against the Shadow Clones. There may be some times where like he gets overwhelmed and maybe has to take a hit, but I really don't think Naruto is going to one-shot Lee here. But in terms of some of the other things that Lee can do, if he tries Primary Lotus, that's probably not going to work that well because Naruto can summon Shadow Clones to help him out, or like even break his fall or something. Or if he's in the air, he can like use the Shadow Clone sign and just disrupt the entire like combo. In terms of like comparing these two, like generally in power wise, like I did bring up kind of like weighted Lee did beat Sasuke up pretty bad before the exams, but by the time we do get to the exams, we see Sasuke's Lee's level, like speed wise, like he's the exact same speed, and this is like amazing the crowd. Everyone's like amazed by this, whereas when Naruto's fighting Neji, he doesn't really start amazing until he gets into that QB amp, which is not coming out here because his chakra points aren't going to be cut off. But just kind of in general here, I don't really see Lee going into the gates because this isn't a life or death situation either. But considering how well Lee was doing against Gaara weightless, and how well that kind of compares to like how well Sasuke was doing weightless, it just doesn't really compare to like Naruto here. Like if you have like a big three of Lee, Gaara, and Sasuke, who are all seem kind of pretty relative, Naruto in base is not on that level. Like we saw Neji, while Neji was pressured, he ended up pretty easily getting 64 palms, and he doesn't really reach that level until he gets into his QB amp. But as I said earlier, that's not coming out here. So there's a lot of like general comparisons going on here. But in general, base Naruto's not really on this top tier level of Lee, Gaara, and Sasuke. And then another thing is like, if this is like a war of attrition, it's going to be hard to see Lee losing because he definitely has like the best stamina out of everyone here.
Yeah. And I'm gonna add to that real quick. Just to talk about the QB chakra, because someone's probably gonna fucking bring it up. I'll blurt myself. At its like best, Lee would be above the QB chakra via 5th gate, right? Even if that got to it. But I've heard this argument before in my comments, and I actually want to address it here in a video. So if you're watching this, shout out to you. This is your moment of fame. Some people try to say, dude, like Naruto has like the QB like eye when he's fighting Gaara, which means like when he summons Gamabunta, right? So that this Naruto, who like notes like this is way more power than when I summoned Gamabunta in training, would be stronger than the Naruto who fought Gaara. That doesn't work because Kishimoto draws Naruto's eye with the slit on multiple occasions, especially in like the final fight with Sasuke. He draws it on multiple occasions especially when it's not the QB. He shows no physical characteristics of the QB, so that argument also doesn't work. If anybody brings that up, but yeah, this QB Naruto really isn't on 5th gate Lee level as well. Just had to make that pretty clear in case anybody brought that up. So yeah, you wanna close this out? Yeah, so Lee honestly should clear this round pretty confidently too, because he's not gonna just be blocking Naruto's Tenketsu and letting a QB come out, honestly. So yeah. Next up, we have Neji versus Kimimaro. Now I could sit here and like really just try and like give you an articulate argument, but the fact of the matter is that Kimimaro's stats are just so much higher than Neji's at this point. Even like him when he's on this like illness state or like ill state and like has to will his mind to move his body, it's still like freaking Tayuya being one of the stronger of the Sound 4. So his stats are gonna be ridiculous. I honestly, and we were talking about this, I don't think Neji even gets close to like tagging him, quite honestly. And even if Neji, like, just due to like his speed being that much higher, I'm gonna talk about Lee in a second, but even if I granted you, right, like Neji like 64 palms, the problem is the minute Neji actually does like pressure Kimimaro, not only can he put up like that layer of the defensive like plating, or in terms of like his bone structure, he also can do the large dance, which is essentially where like bones protrude out of all like aspects of his body. Lee, like, and this is like when he like pops his ribs out and like can defend against Lee trying to go into the primary lotus. So he actually does go into the large dance like type of form. Neji's gonna have no real way to like tangle with him in that close quarters encounters. He's gonna start doing the unorthodox. So there's no real way for like Neji to really contend with like Kibimaru's like raw speed and stats. Now when we get into Lee, some people are gonna bring up the fact that like Kimimaro notes like Drunken Lee is like too fast for him. I low-key got some heat to talk about Drunken Lee. We were talking about this before the video. So essentially, right, in my own perception, I think the Drunken Fist, on top of being extremely unorthodox, is more akin to like a gate amp. Where do I derive this from? In the Naruto Shippuden movie, Lee's fighting an opponent, right? And he like surmises that he either has to go into the 6th gate and risk death, or he uses like an alcoholic bonbon by Guy. And like basically like he's like weighing the fact that like these two options are kind of equivalent, and it's like comparable because he can't defeat this opponent in the 5th gate. Then he gets his drunken state amp and proceeds to bully this person. So it's low-key implied they're like comparable like options in terms of like what he can choose to go into. Now obviously you can argue that's non-canon. I just think like in terms of like discussing the drunken fist and media, it is something to go off of. Back to the original fight though, you know, even if Neji does like 64 palms, I don't think it's a guarantee, especially since Kimimaro can like use like that gold plating under his body, not gold plating, excuse me, steel bone plating. So I think his raw stats are too high. He can also play a ranged game against Neji. Now the benefit for Neji in this scenario is that he is a lot more of a defensive fighter compared to Lee. So, and he should be superior to that like drunken amped Lee. Like he should be above that. If you think like Neji got stronger and we know Lee is weaker, so he actually should perform better than Lee. With Neji's primary objective being to stall out for Gaara in this fight.
Yeah, so in general, it'd be kind of ridiculous to say like Neji can beat Kimimaro here. Like if this is just like a all-out fight and no one's coming to save him, but it's certainly reasonable to say that he can last. Now he doesn't know that Gaara's coming, but it's certainly easy to say that he can last until Gaara comes, because really Kimimaro and like a weekend Lee are fighting, and like neither of them are landing hits on each other. And then, you know, the Drunken Fist comes out, and then Kimimaro decides to start getting serious, starts using a little bit of his version 1, just like a tiny bit. And then, you know, Lee's just like screwed at that point, which is kind of probably going to be the same for Neji, honestly, as the more that Kimimaro powers up, just like the more screwed he becomes. But he doesn't have to fight for that long, so it's very realistic that if Gaara came to save Lee, he's going to be able to save Neji here too.
Yeah, I agree. So Neji should be able to last long enough for Gaara to come support him. Especially if like Lee is able to, and Lee was kind of getting ragdolled around, so it should be pretty. Neji should perform a lot better. So we'll give Neji the pass in this scenario.
And then for the last fight, this is also going to be an interesting one. It's going to be a healthy Rock Lee versus Kidomaru in Neji's position. And it's going to be starting when like the rest of the group goes ahead, and then he's just basically has to one-on-one Kidomaru from that point. Now, in this situation, it's going to be very tough for Lee to deal with like the just versatile onslaught that he's going to be having to deal with all the time. He doesn't have like as good of a defense as Neji, so that's going to be very problematic for Lee in general, especially the spider webs. He's not going to be able to cut through them just in base. So if he ever gets caught by one of these spider webs, or if he gets put in like a really bad position, he's going to end up using gates, because this is a situation where he's trying to protect the people he cares about. And so if he uses gates, this should most likely end up just destroying Kidomaru, as we saw like when Choji used his Chakra Pill power-up, he one-shotted like Jirobo, and if you kind of look at like the scale of both of their attacks, it's pretty similar. But anyway, that is, but the problem is that finding Kidomaru is the problem once he opens the gates, because in the beginning of the fight with Kidomaru versus Neji, Kidomaru is not really hiding. He's not taking Neji that seriously, so it's pretty easy for Neji to end up finding him, because he's in plain sight, really. So if Lee is pressured very early and goes into gates and Kidomaru is visible, he should be able to beat him, even if Kidomaru brings out the gold plating. Like, that wasn't even able to survive like a 64 palms. There's no way that survives onslaught of the gates. The problem is that if Lee does well early on, like if he ends up speed blitzing Kidomaru and trying to primary Lotus him, and Kidomaru uses the gold plating to save himself, and then decides to start getting serious, starts trying to hide, it's going to be very hard for Lee to find him, since Neji had a lot of problem finding him, right? So in that situation where it's kind of more like Lee does well at first, and then he has to go into the gates, I kind of lean more towards him losing, because like Kidomaru is just going to be very well hidden, and he can almost like time out the gates, like if he just wants to play really like keep away. But if Lee is pressured very early and he has to go into the gates, I think that he's going to see Kidomaru and just destroy him.
Yeah, I definitely think this one's a little more, I like how you worded that, a little more depending on like your depiction of how this fight goes, and especially how Lee does like early on. We lean towards Lee, but we acknowledge like this one is very like, it can also go like just as bad for Lee in this situation. So this one is probably like the most split. If you disagreed with one, that one we acknowledge like it's perfectly fine, because it's really like Lee's also in like the worst matchup here, just in the same sense Neji was. And like Neji has all these ridiculous like perception abilities, and even he's having trouble like locating Kimimaro or Kidomaru, excuse me, while dealing with everything he's throwing him. So we acknowledge all that. So we lean towards Lee, but this one we're like the most like this is probably like we could go either way on. I would think we both would be on. So Neji ended up with 2 wins, 1 L against Gaara. Sorry, Neji fans. And Lee ended up with 2 or 3 wins, depending on how you deem the Kidomaru fight. We said he passes that, so we gave him 3 wins. So at his best, he does better than Neji, or at his worst, he ties. So kind of like how you want to word that, but that's kind of how we did it. So I guess we'll say Lee's the victor for the video, or they tie, depending. But yeah, that's the video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. Do you have any closing thoughts for the people?
No, I would say that Lee kind of, he kind of, or I guess Neji kind of got unlucky against Naruto because his best attack, his finishing move, ended up just powering up Naruto.
Yeah.
Kind of unlucky there, so that kind of makes sense why Lee wins. And then, I mean, that's really it.
Yeah, and like a lot of these are opponents like Lee himself like kind of was losing to, you know what I mean? So it's a little it's hard to expect Neji. So that's the video. Definitely check out the Itachi, or not Itachi, what am I talking about? Orochimaru and Jiraiya video on New Horizons channel. I'm gonna link it whenever it's up. Go pressure him to get it up. It came out really good. So that's the video. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye bye.